and welcome to Discovering Seekonk History. I'm Kristen Pine, and with me today is David and Eleanor. Welcome.
Yep.
Good to
Good
be here.
Good to be here. Today we're going to continue with our discussion on
Jacob Hill Farm.
yes, and Eleanor has brought a few items with her that we're hopefully going to get to. So let's jump right into where we left off last time.
Okay.
Okay.
And we should mention that this is part 3. So if anyone missed part 2 is on right now, and then part 1, but you could always go to tv9seekonk.com on the internet, and it's you put in Discovering Seekonk History
Yep.
in the title, and then you can get the other episodes.
Right, and I believe it's you would choose by date. So just go a few weeks prior to this
Right,
date.
the last 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Exactly. Oh, so we left off at part 1 was about the history of going back to the 1722 and before even, and then part 2 was part 1. Part 2 was mostly about what's inside. We have several buildings, so what's inside the clubhouse building, which was the original building.
Right.
And now we're going to talk about the Hunt Club, which is kind of the most interesting part to me anyway, because it's more recent. And we've even met people that were a part of the Hunt Club, so we get firsthand information, and that's pretty exciting. So I think, Dave, you have the
Great.
programs from some of the Hunt shows. Now, the Hunt Club was from 1924 to 1943, and what took place is they had shows which featured, and the programs that you see there on the screen were the kind of the programs from the show. As a list of box holders, and Dave was asking me, well, what is a box holder? Those were the Hunt Club members, and of course they were box holders just like today you have a sporting event, and people have box seats, which are the best seats,
Okay.
and it's usually for the whole year that they pay. So that's what the box holders were. And we're going to talk about that, I think, at the end. We have another slide that shows a whole list of people. And so then I think the next slide would go on to, these are some of the groomsmen, and Dave has done a phenomenal job on these photos. These are really old photos going back to the 1920s, and he kind of cleaned them up a little bit. So here you see 7 groomsmen, and you see the logo, Jacob
Yes.
Hill Hunt, and then their mascot, his name was Blotter, and they would take care of the horses. They were strictly there for the Hunt Club members to take care of their horses, to groom them. That's why they're called groomsmen. They'd get them ready for show, get them ready for a ride. After the ride, cool them down, whatever needs to be done. But these animals that they had were really prized, very expensive horses. So
Now,
they lived on property.
I was just going to ask
you
if
know.
they lived there.
As a matter of fact, I think one of the slides a little bit after this, I'll talk about it when we get to it, is a picture of the barn. And so there was a barn that was there, and it was added on one side for the horses and on the other side for the groomsmen quarters.
Wow.
So,
Now, how many horses did they have, or was there a range?
do you know, I'm not sure.
I was
but
curious here, just counting the number of individuals here.
Right.
Is it one trainer
One to
per
one,
horse?
exactly.
Or
Yeah.
Just curious on that.
There's a lot. That is a good question. I don't know the exact answer. I know that they had, I would say, well over 50 horses, which is a lot,
Wow.
right?
Oh my goodness.
And actually, they kept the stud horses because they're a little bit more active, separate from the other horses in. Where we don't have a picture of it, but in the book that Dr. Earhart did, next door to the clubhouse is another smaller building. We don't own it, but it's on Jacob Street. And it was actually the one-room schoolhouse for the area, which was sold by the town to the Hunt Club members. And Benjamin Ladd Cook, which is the master of the hounds, you know, I spoke about him
Right.
in a previous episode. And master of the hounds is the highest level of, you know, in the Hunt Club. And so he actually lived there, and then there's a barn there for the stud horses. So he kind of
Wow.
oversaw those horses. And so I think we can go to...
Did they have any veterinarians?
Yes.
They
Or are
must have.
these you know,
Nope.
these individuals here had to do, you know, take care of horses completely?
They...
Just curious about that.
You know, they had vets. As a matter of fact, that's a good point. There's also in the book, but not that we have here, is they had a hound hospital. So actually, it's not just a vet for horses, but also a vet for the hounds. You know, they're not called dogs, they're called hounds. And that when they did the horse shows, they had showing of horses, they had showing of the hounds and prizes for the hounds as well. And then they had the coaches. So there's quite a few activities that were going on. Usually, if this doesn't have the month on the program, but usually the shows took place in June. And then they had the hunt that, you know, I talked about a little bit about the foxes and all
Yes.
that in a previous episode. But that usually went on in the fall after, because they had to go out in the fields. It wasn't just on the property,
Right.
but in neighboring fields. And there was an agreement with the neighbors that after the harvest, the last harvest, that they could go in the fields and have their hunt.
Interesting.
And so there was a lot going on, and they definitely needed a veterinarian,
Right.
because the hound hospital was for breeding of the hounds, and then there was breeding of the horses too. And so usually a vet would do that. And of course, if they got sick.
Right.
Horses really have a very gentle, they're not like a cow. A horse, if it gets sick, it's a serious thing because they don't throw up. So if they have a stomach ache, that's a big deal. You have to walk them around until they get better. And yeah, we've
lot of
learned a
work.
lot over the years. But we can go to the next slide maybe, which actually shows Benjamin Ladd Cook. A lot of the information that Dr. Earhart used in the book comes from his memoirs and his scrapbooks that I'm not sure if he was still alive when the book was written, but I know his wife was, because there's a lot of correspondence between the two. So here, the last time we saw a picture of him, he was dressed up in his coaching outfit. This is his hunt outfit. So even though it's a black and white, those jackets would have been red, you know, and the breech is white. And that's another sign of affluence. You know, this is a group of very affluent people. white breeches, they would say. And in any case, again, the jackets were called pinks, okay, and different names for everything. And then we also see, can you read some of is it Carl Marshall?
Carl Marshall.
Which was, actually went to Harvard and was a football player there. And then Hanley,
also
Gerald
Gerald
Hanley. Major. He was a major.
Yes, major.
And those are called whipper-ins. Is that what they say?
Yep, whipper in on both of them.
Which is another term for some of the jobs that they had or positions that they held. Okay, we could show another one. I'm not sure which ones we have. Okay, I thought this was interesting. This is actually an invitation to one of their shindigs. They call it a shindig, right? And look at the admission fee is $1.50. Now, this is a very affluent hunt club.
Right.
$1.50 was a lot of money back then. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And do we have the actual invitation showing the servants? And
That's
do we
down
have
at the
that?
end.
Down at the end. Okay, so we'll get back to this. We can probably go to the next slide if, unless there's any questions you want to ask about this. But that took place in, the shindigs were in the clubhouse.
And that's interesting because it gets you in for the event, and also you have supper too for $1.50.
I know,
Yes.
right? So, okay, now this is, I think, again, Benjamin Ladd Cook and Carl Marshall, I think, or Russell Knowles. That's Russell Knowles, which is a very active member. And I believe he had something to do with Foxley Farm and also with my neighbors that actually owned what was the schoolhouse became part of the hunt club and then was sold to private citizens. And I think Russell Knowles had something to do with that family and also with, like I said, Foxley Farm, which is in Rehoboth. Okay. And he was a very good rider, and there he's holding a trophy. One of the trophies, they were all kinds of silver. Silver was a big thing to have as a trophy. And as a matter of fact, I have one and it's actually Russell Knowles' trophy back from, I'm driving Corey crazy here. Okay, his horse was called Ladies Hunter. It's all inscribed down at the bottom. And this was from 1937. Oh, good. I'll put it like this so people can see it. And it has his name on it, Russell Knowles, at the Jacobs Hill Hunt. And there you go. So that's another one of his trophies. I'm sure he had so many that we were given this one to have.
Do you have many other trophies?
This is the only one.
It is.
So that we
Wow.
have, and we got that about 10 years ago. One of Russell Knowles' relatives had it, and so she brought it by, and we also have a photograph.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's nice. We
Yeah.
have it on display as one of the
Beautiful.
things
Yeah.
at the farm. And okay, so the next one is like one of my favorite things. It's the actual invitation for the party. And you see the horses there, and you see
Yes.
the servants with the dinner and the cocktails. So I actually think the part with the $1.50 was the inside, and the outside was this. And that's not, I found that down at, I was telling Dave, the Rhode Island Historic Society down on, I think it's like around Benefit Street, somewhere there. They just had a big flood, and I'm hoping none of our things got ruined. But there's 14 volumes of information on the Hunt Club. I spent a day there one time way back because we were going to be on television if the walls could talk. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but we were actually on national television about the history of the farm and the things that we've found and the things that we know about it, and we know even more now. Every day I
Great.
find more. So I went down there, and that's where I found the invitation, was in one of the...
I'm going to make sure nobody shows up at your place on June 10th.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's not this year. This was back in the 1920s. So, yeah, but they had a good time. And
It looks like they had a good time,
yeah,
right?
I think so. Everyone's smiling anyway, even the
Even
horses.
the horses.
Right? So I think we could go to the next one. How are we doing on time? I don't want to rush
Oh, we're doing
through
fine.
it.
Doing fine.
Okay. So this is Joseph Conley in front of the coach, the Terry Diddle. Now his position was a guard. Now what the guard does is he sits on the back of the coach, and he has the horn, and so when the coach arrives and he blows the horn to alert people that the coach is here, and if they want to ride, you know, that they should come. And then he also, once the people get on and he looks around and sees that no one else wants to, he blows the horn again, so that alerts the driver of the coach that it's time, everyone is on safe and sound. I was saying it's kind of similar to a train conductor, where the train conductor
Right,
lets
blows the
the
whistle.
engineer
Yep.
to that the everyone's on and the train should go. Now, that horn is very famous. I actually have the original, and well, it's not the original photo, but this comes out of Benjamin Ladd Cook's memoirs and a scrapbook. And the horn is actually from the coach, the Viking, which is the sister coach to the Venture, and both of these coaches are in the Breakers Stable Museum. I think I touched on it,
Yes.
I think in the first program, because the Venture is one of the coaches that the Vanderbilts used to come and show at the shows that they had. Now this coach came from London, and they put it on a steamship to get it over here. Wow. And it says here that it was Eddie Koch that was the driver, and I guess anything on the coach, he had the horn, and he gave it to Joseph Conley. And then Joseph Conley, this is a big deal, actually gave it to Benjamin Ladd Cook's son. And so this photo is in the book also, and also a picture, an actual photo that Dr. Earhart took of the horn, which is above Benjamin Ladd Cook's son's mantle. So it's there, and I don't know where it is now, but this goes, I guess the book was written in the late 70s or the early 80s.
So it's not there on your premises?
It's not, no, it never was, but just a photo of it, a real
Yeah.
photo. So it's one of these days, maybe I'll try to
I know,
find
I
out
wonder
more.
where it is, right?
I know, at this point.
Yeah.
And so there's Bladder again,
Yeah.
looking very dapper there, right? Okay, we'll go to the next.
Now, does the dog actually ride on the coach? Sort of similar to a fire department type of thing?
Exactly, yeah.
That's
Yep.
interesting.
And, the horses like company. So a lot of times dogs are good companions for horses, anything really.
Wow.
So because people that only have one horse usually make sure that they have some kind of big dog, or you know, could be really anything like a sheep, or you know, anything, because they get lonely, horses do. It's funny, you know. But yeah, so that was a good horse dog to have around the horses.
Nice.
And what do we have next? This is, I like this. This is a weather vane. And there was several of these on the buildings. You know, there were several cupolas on the barn. We have one right now. We don't have that weather vane, but that weather vane actually my neighbors have.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, it's hand forged, and it was made for the hunt club to show. Oh, and you see the person on the back, the guard on
the
the back
horn.
with the
Right,
horn,
right.
and you have the driver and a few other people, positions that were sitting there, and the team of horses, a double team. So it's a great piece, and I would love to have it, but at least I get to take a picture of my neighbors, and we have that, a picture of
And those
it.
would be not your race horses. Those would be other horses that would pull the wagon, correct?
Exactly, yeah. A racehorse is a totally different
Right.
animal. He's mostly a thoroughbred, and these were probably, I mean, they could be anything from Clydesdales to, you know, yeah, they're taught to drive, but not a racehorse.
Not
Right.
race.
Would
Yeah.
they stay in your barn, though? Or,
Oh,
or is
yeah.
that separate?
So were they
Oh,
part
sure.
of the 50?
Probably,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the Vanderbilts had their own, and they had 4. So there's 4 right there
Right.
that, you know, you need to drive the team. But I'm not sure if all 4 stayed at, because their coach was in Newport that they would bring in. So maybe, and they had a farm too. I think it was it was in Portsmouth, the farm. That they do polo there now. I think that was Vanderbilt
Yep,
that
I know what
owned
you're
that.
talking about, yes.
And so then they kept a lot of horses there too. So that's a good question. I don't really know the answer, so I'm just guessing here. Get myself in trouble by saying something that's not true, and I don't like that. So, and we could probably go to the next slide, which is actually the barn. Okay, so that
Nice.
middle section, I don't know if you can
This one
notice.
here?
Yep.
Okay.
And that has a cupola, and see there's a cupola to the left.
Yes.
That middle section was actually not an original barn, but there was a couple that owned the farm between the time that the Jacobs had it, and that family, the Allen Jacob family, and when the Grosvenors bought the property in 1915. 4 minutes, oh my gosh. So that was the original, and so to the left was built for the horses to stay, and to the right, which is the part that's still standing, and that middle
This
section.
larger part, right?
Yep,
Okay.
was actually built for lodging quarters for the groomsmen.
Okay, which is
And
what
that's
we
what we
talked about.
use for the inn. Part of the inn has the lodging there.
And it's interesting, on the bottom there, it says that this picture was taken in the winter of 1927.
Yep. So
Yeah.
back then is when it was pretty active with the hunt club. And you have their own water tower in the back, which is no longer there, but the footings for it are there. And yep, so a lot of that is going, well, what I was told actually by one of my neighbors is this portion to the left, this whole section was dismantled and moved to another farm on Elm Street.
Wow.
And then it was dismantled and moved to another farm
my goodness.
after that. So, yeah, so once the Hunt Club was done in 1943, they didn't have any use for this anymore. But there's still a lot more to cover.
Yes, I know. We have just a shy of 3 minutes left. Is there
Oh.
anything that,
Let's go to the next one.
Well,
If you wanna-
so, so the list of members of the Hunt Club were the Vanderbilts, the Firestones, big names in America.
There we go.
The Chafees, which was actually the first superintendent of police in Rhode Island. This is the governor's great-grandfather
Wow.
were members. You have the Sharps, which is Brown and Sharp. You have the Crosses, which is Cross Penn. Shepherd, which is the Shepherd department store. Metcalf, which was the owners of the Providence Journal. So a lot of those were all members and box holders. And but there's a lot of things like the people after the Hunt Club in 1943 were the Taylors, and he was a bank president, and also the Republican National Treasury Commission. So Wendell Willkie ran against Roosevelt, I think, or I'm not sure, but he ran for president, and they had a thing at the Jacob Hill to announce his candidacy. Now, we probably would remember him more if he actually won, but
Right.
he ran on, you know,
yes.
a Republican ticket. And then after that was the Wilsons, which Mary Wilson founded the a Conservation Commission here in Seekonk, which is a big deal, you know,
Right,
and
yes,
they owned the
absolutely.
farm. And she was married to Carol Wilson, which is the manager of the Atomic Energy Commission. And there was a phone in the front building, because that's where they lived, that went to the White House. And I know about this because their children are still living. And so one time they were told that not to answer the phone. Well, it rang and they answered it, and they got in trouble big time. So they remembered that, and they still
Wow.
tell the story today. But,
Well, I hate to have us end, but we're down to seconds. This was so
Okay.
interesting and wonderful, as always. I hope that you'll come back for one more session so we can go over some more pictures,
I'd
slides,
be
comments.
happy to do it, and I hope others that are out there watching will come forward with their stories as well.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Again, any comments or questions, please either hit Facebook or email to historicseekonk.com, and same thing for Facebook. Thank you so much. We hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Great.
Do you think
That time.